Hello everybody, Jake Raby here, Flat 6 Innovations. Want to welcome you back to another Vision technical video. Now in this particular video, we're going to be going over a little bit more about the bore scoring duo, if you will. If you remember back in the last session we had here, we had a pair of Porsche 997s, 41 and 42,000 miles. Neither one of them have been tracked. They're both the same year model. They're both cabriolets, okay? I'm going to take you into the engine from that black car in this next segment. So this engine you see behind me is something that I disassembled today. And this particular engine is the engine from the black cabriolet. If you remember back when I went over all the details between the bore scoring duo, this is the car that had the factory supercharger fit. Now one thing that I will say is this particular car had even less miles on the engine than what we believed, because this engine had been a replacement engine from the factory. This engine only has about 10,000 miles on it. So the car might have had about 41,000 miles in that neighborhood, but we learned this car had gone through a flood and it had to have the engine replaced subsequent to that. So this particular engine is a factory replacement crate engine, if you will, from the dealer. Now, I can tell that based on the engine serial number as well as some documentation that came from the owner when I was asking them why some things were a certain way with the engine. Now remember, this engine also had a supercharger fitted, but that didn't really catalyze this particular failure. So this engine in many ways was beautiful on the inside. It had very few miles on it. It had been taken care of during that time. They did a really good job fitting the supercharger, and trust me, I'm not one about a lot of bolt-on power adders for these cars, but this was a very good system and it was set up very well. It was tuned well, and I do not believe that the supercharger was a catalyst with this failure in any way, shape, or form. You really won't hear me say that in any other circumstances, but this one was done right, the tune was nailed, and this engine suffered bore scoring. And it would have had this happen whether it had the supercharger or not. Now, the engine might have got a little bit more than 8,000 or 10,000 miles out of it, but still, the engine was tuned well and was performing very well. The bore scoring with this particular engine was limited to cylinder 6. Now, this is a characteristic we see play out over and over again. Don't think that cylinder 6 is the only cylinder it can see bore scoring with these engines, because that's not the case. We'll see it happen on cylinder 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5, or we'll see it happen on every single cylinder within the engine. This one was limited to cylinder number 6, and the other cylinders looked really good. Now, that being said, the piston skirt coating was actually starting to lose its adhesion on a few of the cylinders, and I'll throw up some pictures of that as we go along here, so you can actually see that the bore scoring, if you will, is collateral secondary damage that stems from the skirt coating actually failing off of the pistons. So in a lot of ways, we can say that bore scoring is actually a secondary or collateral damage and not the primary failure. Because had that piston not lost its skirt coating, the bore scoring simply would not have occurred. So this side of the piston, which is actually the bottom side of the cylinder, looks unscathed on cylinder number 6. The top side of this particular piston is wiped out. It's one of the worst that we've seen, and when you see the bore scoring here in just a second, you'll see there's an actual ridge worn at the bottom or base of that particular cylinder because the piston slap, the rock of this piston, had advanced so far, okay? So now I want to show you some of this stuff. I'll narrate pretty close up and help you understand what I see. And then I'm going to show you the engine out of the silver car of the bore scoring duo that we just extracted earlier today, and I'll be taking that engine apart tomorrow. Okay, so what you see here is actually the piston for the number 6 cylinder. And I'm using some induced light here, if you will, to show just how worn this particular piston is. And it's one of the worst that we've ever seen that did not completely fail, meaning that the skirt actually broke off, which we've seen happen before. Now, this is all scored on this side tremendously. But then, if you look at this side, it has no problems really whatsoever. And this particular side of the piston still looks really good. The skirt coating has been compromised and is very thin, but wear is not started. And you'll see in the cylinder that the same holds true. The side that had the skirt coating in good condition and still there, still looks good. This particular side here, well, it's a completely different story. And this wear follows the wear in the cylinder very closely. This would be cylinder number 4, cylinder 5, cylinder 6, okay? So just want to show you what these other cylinders look like. I'm going to zoom in pretty closely on these. And we'll start over here at 4. You can see, even with some light, that cylinder is in really good condition. Cylinder 5, very good condition. It's got some light hazing at mid-bore, which is kind of normal. A lot of that is just kind of visual. And then here we are at cylinder 6. Now this one's wiped out. I'm going to zoom in closer here. And this matches that particular piston that we just showed you in the prior scene. Now, this cylinder is classic. It's got all the wear that we typically see, those really deep, really long longitudinal grooves. This defines bore scoring. And a shop used our part 4 of a Focus on Bore Scoring series here on YouTube to properly diagnose this particular engine's bore scoring. Had it not been for that, who knows if it would have been really noted, because the engine did have some symptoms, but it still ran fine. And we hear that all the time. It runs fine. So I'm going to try to zoom in a little closer here and just show you how deep these grooves are. This is really, really bad. You'll probably be able to see, you can actually hear my finger getting caught up on this. That is some very extensive bore scoring. Okay, there's all the rest of the components for this particular engine that came out of the black car of the duo, if you will. Now, take you a little bit of them behind the scenes here at Flat 6, and I want to show you the silver car from the duo. And here's the silver car. That's Snowflake right there. That's my daughter's cat. And this is the silver duo car, and here is its engine. So it was just pulled out today. We'll be disassembling it tomorrow and getting some more video footage of it, and I believe you'll find that it looks almost exactly like the engine that you've just seen here this evening. So thanks again for viewing another RenVision technical video. This one, of course, is the duo of bore scoring. I'm going to come back tomorrow. I'm going to get some more video footage from the other engine. We're going to compile all this together, and then we're going to build these two engines back to back here at Flat 6 Innovations at the Research and Training Facility. So thank you for joining us here at RenVision, and we hope you learn something every time you watch.